all for being here, and let's get into what happened during the Utah 2026 legislative session. Very quickly about myself, my name is Aubrey Snyder, like Sylvia alluded to. I am the second chair of the Legislative Coalition for People with Disabilities, and I am full-time an employee at the Institute for Disability Research, Policy, and Practice at Utah State University. I am a project coordinator there. I oversee several different projects typically related to employment for individuals with disabilities, as well as community integration, and individuals who are 18 and transitioning from school either into post-high or other adult services as well. Outside of my professional work, I am a twin sibling to a brother with Down syndrome and hearing impairments. So I have been in the disability community my whole life. I will give the caveat of my brother passed away about 2 years ago now. So unfortunately, he is no longer with us, but I, of course, hold that role of sibling very near and dear to my heart. So it always makes me very happy to be able to engage with and talk with other family members. I know we're a very tight-knit community, and I just feel so grateful to be able to chat with you all today. So before we dive in, I wanted to just give you all a little bit of information on the Legislative Coalition for People with Disabilities, or the LCPD. I'm going to do my best to use acronyms lightly, just so that I'm not giving you too many. But the LCPD was created back in 1981, and it was created by a group of parents of individuals with disabilities who, of course, wanted to see a better life, better system here in Utah. So they formed a really grassroots advocacy group and have grown throughout the years. I believe it started with 3 or 4 families and has really just kind of expanded out to not just family members, but also professionals, as well as individuals with disabilities in the state of Utah. We are a group who, throughout the year, we meet monthly. It's the first Thursday of every month, except for during the legislative session. We do weekly updates, just so that everyone can stay up to date on what's going on, be up to date on what is going on with bills, where they are, and make sure that we provide opportunities to people for when there is opportunity for things like public comment, or that, there are some serious cuts being considered maybe, and when you should write your legislator. We have several committees at the LCPD, including adult services, children's services, and mental health. These are incredibly broad for a reason. We want to make sure that we capture as much as we can under these, but also knowing that disability, of course, is something that spans across multiple different areas, and we can only track so many things. So these are kind of 3 of our primary areas that we look at. And we actually have elections coming up in May for leadership as well as committee leadership. So if you think that getting involved with the LCPD is something that you might be interested in, or even if you have questions about it, feel free to reach out to me. I've put the QR code here so you can hopefully scan it really easily with your phone if you want to learn more about the LCPD and become a member there, or you can simply go to lcpdutah.org, and there will be a sign up to become a member there. And, oh, Emily, do you have a question? Okay, I'll keep going. To become a member, just so you know, you will sign up through the website. There are no responsibilities really as being a member. We, of course, love when people show up and show up consistently to meetings, but you are not required to. Of course, as a coalition, we understand that days are busy, months are busy. We just encourage people to come when they can and share information when they have it. So if you have any questions for me about that, please let me know. I will be showing this again at the end when we talk a little bit more about getting involved. So there's another opportunity to get that QR code and that webpage if you don't have it now, or if you weren't able to get it now. Okay, just because I don't know everyone's level of how much they know about the legislative session, I wanted to just give some primers so that people aren't going into this blind. I apologize if this is all old news to you, but I figure it never hurts just to briefly go over things. So today we're going to be talking about the Utah State Legislative Session. This is a 45-day long session here in the state of Utah that typically runs January through March. This is a time when laws are primarily created or changed here in Utah, and the budget is set for the next fiscal year. The legislature is made up of the House of Representatives as well as the Senate, and we will be, which each of us have two. We have one individual in the House of Representatives that represents us, and then one individual in the Senate. And then we'll also be talking about committees, and committees are an incredibly important thing because that is really one of the primary areas where we can get involved in a really impactful way. I'll be talking a little bit more about committees, but just so you know, there are several different committees that are a part of the legislature. This includes the rules committees. There is a House Rules Committee and a Senate Rules Committee. And the Rules Committee is where bills first go to be assigned to their standing committee. There are several different standing committees. These are things like the House Health and Human Services Committee, the House Education Committee. There's the Senate side of each of these as well. There are several different committees, and I will quickly show you each of those as well in the following slides. There are the appropriations subcommittees. These fall under the Executive Appropriations Committee. The appropriations subcommittees are where specific budget items are discussed and whether there may be cuts or increased funding, maybe one-time funding or ongoing funding for specific programs, for specific services, things like that. These subcommittees then take their recommendations and they give them over to the Executive Appropriations Committee, who then takes those recommendations, considers them, maybe takes some of them, throws out some of them, and gives us their final budget. And then, as Sylvia said, there are also interim committees, and these are committees that meet outside of the regular legislative session, and this is a time for legislators to take on some special topics or discuss bills that they're wanting to be researching and looking at for the upcoming legislative session. I'm really quickly going to go over just the process of how a bill becomes a law here in Utah. This, of course, can get muddled. There are a lot of different things that can happen. There are terms like circled and tabled for bills. I'm not going to go into all of it today just because I think we could also spend a full hour talking about that. If you do have questions about this or you want someone to walk you through things, let me know. I'm happy to even just kind of do some one-off conversations. I really love things like this, so I can be a little nerdy about it. I get it. Not everyone else loves it. So here in Utah, how a bill becomes a law, it starts off with a representative, whether that's someone in the House or in the Senate, identifying a need or an idea within our community. And this really comes from us constituents. This is us telling our representatives that we have a need or an idea of something that either could be better in our systems or in our state, something that's not working and we need that to be changed or taken out completely. So it really starts off with that need or that idea. Once a representative says, yes, I want to run with this idea, I really understand this need and I want to change this too, or I want to create this too, or get rid of this too, a bill is drafted. The bill titles, you'll see every bill starts with either HB, which means House Bill, or SB, which means Senate Bill. And that just tells you where that bill originated from. So if a senator is the individual who identified that need and wanted to run that bill, helped with drafting that bill, it's going to be a Senate bill. Just as opposite, if a House of Representatives member is the person who identified that need, wanted to help that idea, and they were the primary sponsor on that, it's going to be a House bill. So really the HB and SB just tells you where that bill originated in. Once a bill is drafted, it first goes into the chamber where it is introduced in or originated in. And just for example's sake, I'm going to stick with a House bill. So let's say a House bill is drafted. It is first going to go to the House just to be introduced, and immediately it's going to go into that Rules Committee like we talked about. The Rules Committee is going to look at that bill and see its contents and what topic it may best fall into, and then be assigned to a specific committee that the Rules Committee thinks that falls best into. Most of the bills that we tend to track fall into either the House or Senate Health and Human Service Committees or the education committees in either of those chambers. There are several other committees, and we'll quickly look at those. But those are the two that I typically watch a lot of the bills that are going into those in. Once a bill is in committee, this is really the time that we can really get involved, because committee hearings are where the bill is read. Legislators are able to ask questions about it, get answers on it, but they're also able to hear from the public on it. And so this is the time for public comment. When you see that a bill is in committee, you know that there will be time set aside for that bill, for individuals from the community to come up and either say why they agree with this bill and would like to see it passed, or why they don't like this bill, and would urge legislators to vote against it. If a bill passes out of committee, so let's say a House bill, it is a bill that funds the entire wait list. Everyone loves it. Family members come, they say, we love this bill, here is why. Individuals with disabilities come, they say, we love this bill, here is why. It gets passed out of committee. It's then going to go to the floor of that same chamber. So it's going to go to the House floor to then be voted on by the entire House, not just the committee. If the committee does not vote a bill favorably out of committee, then either it's because that bill needs some amendments done to it, or there's some more research that they would like done on it before they vote on it, or they vote to not pass it out of committee. And then at that point, that bill dies. If it does get favorably passed out of committee, then it goes to that floor, it gets debated on again. There is not time here for public comment. This is just for legislators. And then if it is voted favorably again, it goes over to the other side of the chamber. So for the House, again, if it was a House bill, it would then go over to the Senate for that entire process to restart. And that means that there is another opportunity in that committee for more public comment. If a bill makes it all the way out of both chambers, it of course then goes to the governor. The governor can either sign it into law or he can veto it. If a bill is vetoed, it will go back to its original chamber that it was introduced in. And they can choose to override that veto and then pass it over to the Senate to also override that veto. But if not, then the bill dies. That is a very quick summary of how a bill becomes a law here in Utah. Do I have questions or comments or any insight? If someone's been like, it was explained to me this way and I think it really clicked, and I'd like to share it with the group. Okay, excellent. The last thing I wanted to quickly show you is the Utah State Legislature website. I'm actually going to really quickly get out of this PowerPoint and just show you the actual website, because I think it's a little bit more helpful. Obviously, the legislative session has passed, so this website may not be entirely relevant to you right now unless you want to keep up with what's happening in the interim. But just so you know, going into next year and you feel a little bit more confident navigating this website, hopefully this is helpful for you. So some of the things I'm just going to really quickly go over is looking at the legislators tab, the bills tab, the committees tab, and then I'm going to really quickly show you how you can create your own profile and track your own bills, just so you can see what that looks like. So here we have the Utah State Legislature website. It's just le.utah.gov. And on the main page, you will see that immediately there is a calendar, which there's no events today, but during the legislative session, you will see there were several different events throughout the day so that you know what's going on, each day of the week. Also down here, there are some significant dates along with other links of some either resources that you may want to dig into to, float around on in there. Now, legislators. The legislators tab, this is really great because if you don't know who your legislators are, you can do so by going to find by address or map. This will just really quickly take you to the legislative district maps. You'll type in your street address and your zip code, and it will pop up who your legislator in the House of Representatives is and who your legislator is in the Senate. You can also see a breakdown of the entire House as well as the entire Senate. If you're interested to, learn about specific legislators, maybe there are legislators who tend to run a lot of bills that you either agree with or don't agree with. You want to learn a little bit more about them, find their email. You can do that by going over to these two web pages. In the Bills tab, this is where you're going to be able to find all of the bills that have been introduced throughout the session. Now, as you can see, this can get really overwhelming really quick. For example, in 2026, just barely in the legislative session, there were over 600 House bills introduced, as well as almost 350 Senate bills. That is a lot of bills to dig through, which is why places like the Legislative Coalition for People with Disabilities, the Disability Law Center, there are several organizations and groups that will do bill trackers and do that digging for you so that you don't have to go through it. Now, if you're someone who loves going through bills and reading them, that is how you will get there, is by going to this bills tab, and you can just go crazy and read all the bills that you want to. Another tab that I find very helpful is the committees tab. This is where you are able to find all of the committees that are in the legislature. They have it here in alphabetical order, but you'll be able to see that there are several House committees. So again, I alluded to, I look at a lot of bills that tend to go through either the Education Committee or the Health and Human Services. There it is, House Health and Human Services Committee. Same thing down here at the Senate. There are the Senate Education Committee as well as the Senate Health and Human Services Committee. But you can see here there's several different committees. There's the Ethics Committee. There are the Judiciary Law Enforcement and Criminal Justice Committee, the Natural Resources Committee. There are a whole bunch of different committees here so that they can cover all of the different topics that bills will be falling into. The other thing with committees that I just want to show you are these specific appropriations committees. So again, these are the committees that are considering the funding items throughout the session. And you'll see here there are several subcommittees. I go to a lot of the Social Services Appropriations Subcommittee meetings. Just again, that's where our disability specific funding items tend to fall into. But there's also a Public Education's Appropriations Subcommittee, Transportation, Higher Education, so on and so forth. And all of these, again, fall under that Executive Appropriations Committee. Committees are made up of, hold on, let me back up. Specific House and Senate committees are made up of either House or Senate members specific to that committee. The Appropriations Committee committees are made up of both House and Senate members. So there is a mix of both of those. It's incredibly helpful to know who are in these committees. And I'm just going to go back and give you an example of that House Health and Human Services Committee, because you'll see here on the right-hand side who is in that committee. And this is incredibly helpful to either one, know if your representative is someone in a committee that a bill that's important to you is being heard in, so that you can communicate directly with them. But also knowing that even if your legislator does not make up the individuals in that committee, it is still incredibly helpful and necessary for you to still communicate with those committee members. Those committee members at that point are really honestly there for the entire state. All of these individuals are representing health and human service issues within Utah. And by clicking on each of their names, you'll be able to see their profile, their email, and be able to get that information from them. The committees pages are also helpful because, as you can see here on the left-hand side, you'll be able to see the meetings that took place or either are going to take place or did take place. And this is where you'll be able to join those meetings. So you can either join committee meetings in person or online. And if you're joining online, this is where you'll go in order to participate virtually. And you can make public comment virtually as well. I should add that. Okay. That is it for my background on the legislature and the legislative session. Do I have any questions around processes or things that you want to know about navigating the website? Anything like that? Okay, excellent. You guys are very easy. Okay, so let's get into the meat of what happened this legislative session and talk about some bills that passed. Very quickly, I am going to put into the chat a PDF of kind of a more extensive summary of what happened this legislative session. Again, I'm not going to go over all of these just because I think that that could really take up another, 3 hours of our time if we wanted to go through all of them. But I do want to just give that to you. There are some resources at the bottom as well, just so that if you're interested in learning even more or digging around yourself into some more resources, those are available to you in there. If you have questions on it, please let me know. Okay, so some bills that passed this legislative session. I'm just gonna start kind of talking. If people have questions, again, feel free, raise your hand, put in the chat, just interrupt me. So the first bill that I'm going to talk about really quickly is House Bill 12. This is the Outdoor Recreation Accessibility Amendments. It was sponsored by Representative Walton and then co-sponsored by Senator Owens. This bill went through very, very quick. It was like passed through both chambers right away and sent to the governor for signing, I think within the month of January, honestly. Because it was such just kind of a no-brainer question. And obviously being House Bill 12, it's one of the first bills that also got out of the gate. And this bill is just doing something really simple. It is adding, in quotes, construction of trails or facilities, improvements of trails or facilities, or acquisition of equipment for disabled or adaptive users into recreational infrastructure projects. So a lot of our parks here in Utah, like our state parks, national parks, local parks even, here in Utah, use state money in order to ensure that there are, our trails remain well maintained, the bathrooms are maintained, things like that. Something that was not in law was the use of these funds to go towards either buying or fixing equipment that individuals with disabilities may use in order to access those parks, or creating adaptive like trails or ensuring that trails are paved, things like that, so that individuals who use wheelchairs can access them. So this was kind of a no-brainer, really easy thing that representatives could do in order to ensure that that money could be used to making parks more accessible for individuals with disabilities. House Bill 108, Minors in State Custody Amendments. This was sponsored by Representative Fiafia and Senator Weiler. This is really cool. So House Bill 108 is creating an account for children who are in DCFS or in the foster system. It creates an account for them that money gets put into that they will be able to access once they age out of services. And for children with disabilities, this money will go into an ABLE account. So this sets up just kind of that this sets up an assurance that for those children that are aging out of services, they have a small pot of money that can support them with education or training, things that they would like to go into, maybe helping with buying a car, paying rent, paying for food, things like that. We know that statistically, a lot of individuals who age out of foster care end up in our jail system. They tend to often be not have the same access to like education as other individuals, or need higher supports with like employment. They also experience higher rates of homelessness. So this is just trying to do something that will set them up for a little bit more success here in Utah. House Bill 143, Special Education Amendments. This is from Representative Peterson as well as Senator Baldery. And this came from actually a family of an individual, of a student with a disability who contacted Representative Peterson and told her that their school district was changing the boundaries, and it was going to impact their child's where their child received special education services. They Previous to this, there was no requirement around when schools had to tell families about these boundary changes. So this law is ensuring that the school district, or you can see here, there's an acronym, LEA, the local education agency. That's a lot of legal jargon or legislative jargon, a school district, that they need to let parents know at least 30 days in advance to the change, so that if parents or if boundaries do change, parents are notified well within reason, so that if they do have an argument for why they want to stay at that specific school, or have anything that they need to talk through about this boundary change, they have that 30 days advance notice, and it's not just happening kind of at the beginning of the school year without proper notice. House Bill 393, Early Intervention for Dyslexia Amendments. This is from Representative DeFay and Senator Milner. House Bill 393, I'm sorry, numbers and me are not really friends. I mix them up in my head a lot, so I apologize if I do that at all. House Bill 393 is going to create a dyslexia screening pilot program. This is going to be I believe it's a 5-year pilot program that will take place in 2 schools in Utah. I believe they're picking a rural school to launch this in, as well as an urban school. And then it's going to be working with the University of Utah to develop a statewide dyslexia intervention plan, as well as a screener for students. And the hope here is that more students throughout the state of Utah will be tested and regularly tested for dyslexia during those really developmental years. And then also creating a more robust screener as well. The fiscal note includes $3.5 million one time, just to support the development and implementation of the pilot program, as well as the developing of that statewide intervention plan and the screener as well. This one's very cool. We're excited to see so much money going into this, and seeing this be something that I'm excited to see where this goes statewide. So, okay, going to our next. Okay, more bills that passed. Senate Bill 54, there are 3 substitutes to this bill. That's what that S3 means. This is the Carson Smith Opportunity Scholarship Program Amendments. It was introduced by Senator Fillmore and then co-sponsored by Representative Walter. And Senate Bill 54 makes several changes to the Carson Smith Opportunity Scholarship. It's going to eliminate the income requirement for families who are going for this scholarship, as well as remove the eligibility for a sibling to also participate in this scholarship as well. Senate Bill 181, School Discipline Amendments. This is from Senator Escamilla and Representative Thompson. And this one was one that I really watched as well. This is going to be changing some requirements around the use of seclusion rooms in schools. I don't know how many of you are familiar with seclusion rooms in schools. They're exactly what they sound like. There are rooms where a student with a disability typically is placed if they're, how can I put this? I don't always love the use of them. So I am also treading in the space of just wanting to make sure that I give space to both sides here. But it's trying to make sure that if a student needs a place to de-escalate, there is a secluded space for them there. Historically speaking, there has been a lot of inappropriate uses of seclusion rooms where students are left unattended because they're in a room where they are secluded. There may be, I don't want to always say that this happens, but there could be room for abuse or neglect to be going on of a student in a seclusion room. There have absolutely been reports of students harming themselves further being in seclusion rooms. And we really know that secluding someone is not always the de-escalation tactic that we think that it is. So what this bill does is it is requiring the use of audio and video recording in all seclusion rooms in Utah. So schools that have seclusion rooms are going to be required to put in audio and video recording. There is a chunk of money. You can see here, there's a little over $14,500 of one-time funding so that schools can come into compliance with this. Schools are able, I believe, to, if a new school is being built, they're still able to build a seclusion room into that school. But this funding is not used to like create new seclusion rooms that in schools that don't have one now and they want one. It can't be used to create new seclusion rooms. It also ensures that there are like venting and heating and cooling requirements in these rooms. So just trying to make sure that there's a little bit more oversight happening when seclusion rooms are used in schools. Finally, the last bill I'm going to touch on that passed is Senate Bill 288, Medicaid Provider Amendments. This was primarily sponsored by Senator Stratton and then co-sponsored by Representative Ellison. This bill went through a series of different substitutes. As you can see, there are 5, and that means simply that the language in the bill changed 5 different times. And it started off the Utah Association of Community Service Providers or Services, or UACS, there's another acronym for you all. UACS really worked hard on getting this bill put out in front of legislators. What it originally intended to do was create a yearly incentive where all Medicaid providers would be eligible for, and it would be tied to a quality metrics. It would be tied to quality metrics that would be outlined by whatever department kind of oversees that Medicaid provider group. And if that, specific provider groups, so for example, DSPD providers, home health providers, there's even like some hospital, like large hospital providers. I believe some Lifelight providers were included in this. So Medicaid providers is a very broad group. But they would be, if based on how they, do each year and what they're showing in their quality metrics, they would be eligible for the Social Services Sub-Appropriations Committee to provide them a one-time incentive each year for hitting those metrics. Now, there's not enough money in the state to be used for all providers to get that incentive. So it would change every year. There was not like a set schedule or, outline of specific providers that would, get it every other year or something. It was simply each year the Social Services Appropriations Subcommittee would get a report talking about each of the different Medicaid provider groups, how they did based on their quality metrics, and then be able to decide if they wanted to provide this one-time incentive. It got changed around a lot, and in some ways, I think better, where they ended up, and the Executive Appropriations Committee ended up doing some work on this. They ended up doing some ongoing funding for specific Medicaid provider groups through this bill. So, for example, DSPD providers, I believe home health providers, the New Choices waiver providers, few others through this bill got ongoing state funds, not just a one-time incentive, but ongoing state funds to ensure that there is at least a small rate increase for these providers every year. For DSPD specifically, they got a $4 million ongoing in state funds, and that roughly estimates to about a 2% rate increase. And I'm going to be talking a little bit more about funding on the next, in a couple of slides. But one thing I wanted to note is that back in 2025, DSPD did have a rate study done, and it showed that Medicaid providers or DSPD providers are about 24% underfunded right now. So a 2% rate increase is something. It's not nothing, and it could have been nothing. So we are very happy to see that there is at least a slight rate increase. I would love to see in future years if we could get a couple chunks of one-time funding for these providers so that we can catch up to that 24% gap and then be able to continue to have that 2% rate increase. 2% isn't, a huge chunk of money, but that's about standard for private and public rate like cost of living increases. So it's not nothing. Some bills that failed this year. House Bill 578, this is Guardianship and Conservatorship Resources Amendments. It was sponsored by Representative Daley Provost. As you can see, that is a very high numbered bill. It came in probably to the second to last week of the session. The likelihood of it passing through was already pretty slim just because it was such a late bill. But this would have required the State's Protection and Advocacy Agency, or the Disability Law Center, as well as local mental health authorities, and then certain offices and divisions under the Department of Health and Human Services. So divisions like the Division of Services for People with Disabilities, Office of Substance and Mental Health Services, things like that, to provide information and referrals to resources on guardianship and conservatorship to individuals contacting these entities. So just ensuring that when people call these different agencies, organizations, offices, they have information ready around guardianship as well as alternatives to guardianship, family support organizations, attorneys that can help with guardianship, things like that. This bill did not pass. Representative Daley Provo did run a very similar bill last year, and I would not be surprised if she ran another similar bill next year. Representative Daley Provo also ran House Bill 579. This one would have been really exciting. So the state has a Medicaid ACA fund that is used to support Medicaid services here in Utah. It has a very high number in it, and it's to be used if there is ever like an emergency in Medicaid funding. So if our federal government, for whatever reason, funding did not come through for them, the state needed to support some of that Medicaid funding here for individuals, there's a rainy day bucket for it. This money is being invested every year. And so there is a huge return every year getting put into this account. And the interest that's being earned on that account is currently not going towards anything. It is just going back into the account so that it continues to grow. I can't tell you the exact number off the top of my head right now, but I believe it is in the hundreds of millions of dollars. So it is a huge amount of money, and you can imagine that the return or the interest made on it every year, it is also millions of dollars that is being made and is going back into the fund, which is great. But the idea is that the fund probably itself doesn't need to grow anymore where it has so much money in it. And this interest, even if it's not all of it, could be used towards other things. So this bill would have directed that part of that interest earned, at least $700,000 of that interest earned every year would be used towards funding on the DSPD waitlist. So Representative Daley Provo was at least trying to find a place where money exists that currently isn't being used to at least create some type of stability for that DSPD waitlist funding, because as of right now, it is just up year to year to for the legislature to decide how much funding goes towards the waitlist. There's not a set amount that has to be put towards the waitlist. They could say $0 goes towards the waitlist this year, and that would be that. So this was attempting to do something with it. This also got put in pretty late. There's a somewhat high fiscal note attached to it. It did a couple of other things as well. And so it did not go through, but this would be really cool to see happen next year. So I'll be interested to talk about that in the interim and see, how we can really collaborate and come together to hopefully promote something like this. Senate Bill 159, dyslexia screening amendments from Senator Reeby, did not pass. This would have expanded dyslexia screenings in schools. I believe this did not pass because House Bill 393 passed and is going to be doing a huge chunk of work in that dyslexia screening here in Utah that we just talked about. So that did not pass, but I don't think that was all for naught. The final bill I'll talk about today that did not pass, it's actually a joint resolution, and this was regarding Utah's Protection and Advocacy Agency. It was sponsored by Representative Weiler and then co-sponsored from Representative Thurston. And this Senate joint resolution would have asked the governor to formally review the Disability Law Center's designation as our state's protection and advocacy agency. And if found that they should be redesignated, it would have outlined the steps for that redesignation. This did not end up going anywhere. This died. And so that is that. I see I have a question about the dyslexic bill that passed. Feel free to unmute yourself or type it. Yeah, exactly what Sylvia just said.
Hi there.
Hi.
I walked out of the room when you started talking about it. So, because I've wanted my daughter tested for dyslexia. Does that mean that I could ask for it, or what's the story on that?
Yeah, so the dyslexia bill that passed, this is going to create a very large dyslexia screening pilot program, but only in 2 schools right now.
Oh.
For the next 5 years. It is going to be creating a screener for other schools to be able to use, as well as a statewide dyslexia intervention plan. I don't know that right away this is going to mean that there is an increase in like dyslexia testing across the state. I think there will be an increase, but I don't think that that's going to be like starting this year, we're going to see an uptick in dyslexia screening.
Okay.
I could be wrong, but that's my read on it.
Yeah, she's 16 already, but because I haven't known where to go, and I've heard it's really expensive to test, and I don't even know what really expensive means. If it's a few hundred or a few thousand or what.
Or what? Yeah, and I would imagine if she's still in school, I would imagine that the school should be able to support you with that.
Well, the last time I said something, they said it doesn't matter if she tests that way or not, we're going to treat her the same. And so nothing got done.
Can I write your email down and contact you? Because that should not be the school's reaction to you requesting for dyslexia testing. And that should not be the react. If your daughter tested, if your daughter has dyslexia, then that should absolutely not be the case that she will just be, I mean, obviously treated the same in the sense of being respected and served, but that would assume that there should be some changes in how like reading instruction is being provided, and I would assume that that would be something that she would want on. I don't know what your daughter's dreams and aspirations are, but having that diagnosis can support for accommodations lifelong that will be helpful for her. So
Um, but there's not any schools that test for dyslexia now, right?
I I believe that there are schools that there should be dyslexia testing available. I'm going to write your email down,
Okay, sure.
and well, I see you've put it in the chat. Well, your email is your name in the chat. So I'm just going to
Yeah,
save
yeah,
it,
yeah.
and that way I don't take everyone's time writing down your name.
Yeah, I agree. I
Yes.
agree.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you,
No, thank
Aubrey.
you. Thank you for the question.
Okay, bye.
All right. Okay, and I know we're running out of time, so I'm just going to really, really quickly talk about items that were funded. We were very excited to see that early intervention received 2 million ongoing. This has been incredibly needed for early intervention. Our early intervention providers have been severely underfunded. They have not received a good quality rate increase, I believe, since 2017 or 2018. And so this was very exciting to see. They did ask for 4.5 million ongoing. It got bumped down to 2 million. I would really love to see another push for that next session, just because I think, similar to DSPD providers, we're so far behind that even a huge chunk in funding like this doesn't quite hit the nail on the head where it needs to be. But this is a huge step in the right direction. I believe last year they received a one-time amount of like 1 million or something like that, and it did not do what it needed to do. So I'm really excited to see that. I've already told you all that there were some rate increases through Senate Bill 288, including services through DSPD or providers through DSPD, providers that go through the New Choices waiver, home health providers, and then private duty nursing rates also increased. And then the Executive Appropriations Committee did approve funding for 100 individuals to be pulled off of the wait list and into services. I know that that is not a huge number compared to how many individuals are waiting for services, but it is something. And many of you may recall that at the beginning of the session, there was the possibility of a 10% cut in DSPD services, as well as an elimination of the limited supports waiver. No cuts ended up happening. There was not an elimination of a waiver. So honestly, I'm just happy to see that there is any funding for people to be brought off the wait list. And I think that that was a really, really beautiful example of families showing up and telling their story about how this would impact their loved one if there was a cut. So with that being said, how to advocate, and this could be another hour-long presentation. So I want to make sure that there's enough time for at least a question or two. I know we're getting to the end. But first and foremost, join us at the LCPD. We are a very opinionated and fun group, I would argue. And we meet monthly. Again, like I said, it's the first month of every month. Unless it's during the legislative session, then we do meet weekly. And we're really finding ways to make sure that families, individuals with disabilities, and professionals have a space where voices can be heard, opinions can be shared. And oftentimes I have my areas that are, near and dear to my heart in the disability community. I know that there are so many different areas that people are passionate about. So this is really a great place for us to all come together and share about those areas, what's going on, what the issues are, and then be able to collaborate in that space as well. Of course, following bills and making comment during committee is going to be a huge place that you can make an impact. And the Legislative Coalition for People with Disabilities is really here to help you. We love being able to support people with letter and email writing, phone call scripts. If you need to talk through a subject, make sure that you feel like you're educated enough about it. to speak to it and then be able to share why you know, agree or don't agree with that bill that's being put out there. We really want to be that place for you to come and be able to run your ideas and your hopes by us. So, and just be able to get a little bit more support there. Of course, calling and writing your legislators and committee members. Like I said, those committee members, even if you're a legislator, is not specifically on a committee that the bill that you're interested in is in, that's okay. Those committee members are there for our state. And of course, it is even better when your legislator is, but it's not imperative for you to write the committee member, for you to write committee members that your legislator is in that committee. And then, of course, like I've alluded to, like us here at the LCPD, find others who share your passions and ideas and band together. We are really excited in the interim to talk a lot more about the waitlist this year and tackling that topic. It's just really time for there to be some sustainable funding in place. And I think we're all getting to a place of like, come on, let's just go for it and figure out how to do this, because we know that there are ways. So all of that being said, it's time for questions. I'm going to leave this up in case anyone needs the website or the QR code. I do see that I have some chats, so I just want to make sure. My granddaughter, see, has a deleted gene tonight. Is there any funding for genetic conditions? Marcy, thank you so much for the question. I do not specifically know of any funding that is carved out specifically for genetic conditions. I am very happy just to quit. That's not, like I said, I can't cover every single area. And that's not typically one of the areas that I look at, but I am going to write this down, make sure that I'm not missing anything, and then I will get an answer back over to Sylvia and hopefully be able to
Uh,
answer that for you.
One,
Unless,
Aubrey, one of the bills that did pass, I don't have the number of it in front of me right now, has to do with medical professionals and conflict of interest if they leave one hospital to go to another. And that did pass. And so
yes.
before medical providers could not work in their field after they left an employer. They had to have an extended amount of time in between switching locations or switching offices. And it actually made a lot of medical providers and specialists not really want to work in the state of Utah because they have to be unemployed or like do a different type of work for 1 to 2 years or whatever it was. And that did pass. And so I think for the medical community, genes, genetic disorders, the rare community, this was very big because now we'll have more consistent providers and probably more providers that would be open to coming and doing work in Utah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Sylvia. I appreciate you adding that in. Any other questions or thoughts? Okay.
I just want to plug LCPD meetings again because I know everyone is so busy, but the LCPD meetings are on Zoom and you can join them from home or while you're driving and doing errands and just listen and learn. And then it's a great opportunity to expand your knowledge and your connections. So they're very easy. You don't have to drive anywhere and go to an in-person meeting. You can just join on your phone or your laptop and get connected that way.
Yeah. And I will add, we are, like Sylvia said, we try to be as accessible as possible. Join us online. And then every year we do host one in-person event, the LCPD legislative reception. And this is really a lovely time too for members to actually get to meet each other in person, talk with your legislators, talk with other professionals and family members in the community. So I'll just put a plug in for that as well, that we do have that one event too. That is always a blast. So, okay, I know we are 1 minute over time. If you do have other questions or you want to learn more about the LCPD, feel free to email me. Go to lcpdutah.org. Feel free to email Sylvia, and Sylvia can email us. There's a bunch of different ways that you can get connected. So thank you. I appreciate your time, and thank you for letting me come in and talk at you all for an hour.
Aubrey, thank you so much for putting together this presentation and for being such an amazing resource and educator so we can all learn more. And thank you to all of the parents and caregivers and family members and advocates that joined us today. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to come and learn. We appreciate you guys so much. Have a wonderful rest of your Friday afternoon.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Well, have a great weekend. Enjoy the weather.
Okay, thank you. Bye.